Welcome back to Void of Fears. Before we jump into today's story, I've got to ask for a quick favour. If you could smash that like button, drop a comment below, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. It seriously makes a huge difference. YouTube's algorithm loves that stuff, and it pushes my videos to new viewers who might dig these stories too. I really appreciate every single one of you who takes the time to do that. It means the world to me and helps keep this channel growing. Alright, enough of me rambling. Let's dive into today's story. Imagine a place so remote, so untouched, that even the most extreme secrets could lie buried beneath miles of ice. What if I told you that in Antarctica's frozen heart, something truly terrifying happened? An event so unsettling, it forced an investigation into the planet's most desolate continent. This is the story of Station Polaris and the 12 people who vanished into the ice. What you're about to hear is based on declassified reports, recovered journals, interview transcripts, and audio recordings that were never meant to be made public. Some details have been redacted by international agreement. Others remain unexplained to this day. This is their story, November 17th, 2023, 11:47 p.m. The Australian Research Monitoring Centre in Hobart receives a distress call from one of the most isolated places on Earth. The communications officer on duty, Angela Morrison, had been monitoring routine check-ins from various Antarctic stations all evening. Then, her headset crackled with something different. The voice on the other end belongs to Dr. David Hendricks, lead researcher at Station Polaris, located 600 miles from the South Pole. Morrison would later tell investigators that something in his voice made her blood run cold before she even understood his words. "Something's wrong. The ice. We shouldn't have gone down there." Static. Then silence. Morrison immediately attempted to re-establish contact. Nothing. She tried every frequency, every backup channel, dead air. She escalated to her supervisor within 90 seconds. Protocol dictated that all Antarctic distress calls be taken with absolute seriousness. In that environment, help could be days away. Every second mattered. But in this case, help would arrive too late. Far too late. Station Polaris was established 5 years prior, in 2018, as part of an international climate research initiative funded by a coalition of 12 nations. Its location was chosen specifically for its remoteness and the depth of ice beneath it. Here, scientists could drill deeper into Earth's climate history than almost anywhere else on the continent. The station itself was a marvel of engineering designed to withstand the most extreme conditions on the planet. It consisted of 6 prefabricated buildings, connected by insulated tunnels, all mounted on hydraulic stilts to prevent the structures from being buried by drifting snow. The main building housed living quarters, a common area, kitchen, and medical facility. The other buildings contained laboratories, equipment storage, the power generation facility, and communications arrays. It was a tiny island of warmth and light in an ocean of frozen darkness. During the Antarctic summer, when the sun never sets, Station Polaris could house up to 40 researchers. But during winter, when the sun doesn't rise for 4 months, only a skeleton crew remained. 12 people. The minimum needed to maintain the station and continue essential research. These weren't just any 12 people. They were volunteers who understood what they were signing up for. 4 months of darkness. Temperatures that could drop to negative 100 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill. Complete isolation from the rest of humanity. No flights in or out until spring. If something went catastrophically wrong, you were on your own. Dr. Patricia Vance, a climate scientist with the British Antarctic Survey, had spent 2 previous winters at research stations similar to Station Polaris. She helps us understand what this isolation truly means and why only certain people volunteer for winter duty. When you're down there in winter, you're cut off in a way most people can't comprehend, she explains, her voice carrying the weight of memory. She speaks slowly, carefully, as someone who has thought about these things during long, dark months. No flights in or out, no rescue if something goes catastrophically wrong. The darkness is absolute, not like night in the rest of the world. There's no moon bright enough to illuminate the landscape. No city lights on the horizon, just black. The cold is so extreme, it hurts to breathe. The moisture in your breath freezes instantly. If you go outside without proper protection, exposed skin gets frostbite in under 2 minutes. She pauses, looking out a window at the grey English sky, perhaps remembering clearer, colder horizons. You're entirely dependent on your team and your equipment. One serious generator failure, and you could freeze to death before you got the backup running. The psychological weight of it is immense. You know, intellectually, that you're trapped there until spring. That if something goes wrong, truly wrong, there's no cavalry coming over the hill. You are the cavalry, and if you fail, well, the ice doesn't care. It's been there for millions of years. It'll be there for millions more. You're just a temporary intrusion. She looks back at the camera. There's a saying among Antarctic researchers, the ice always wins. Always. You can fight it, study it, drill into it, build on top of it. But eventually the ice wins. It's patient. It's inevitable. And it never, ever forgives mistakes. Dr. David Hendricks understood these risks better than most. At 43, he was an experienced glaciologist with 15 years of polar research under his belt. His colleagues universally describe him as meticulous, level-headed, the kind of person you wanted leading a team in extreme conditions. Dr. Raymond Torres worked with Hendricks on 3 previous expeditions. David was the gold standard, Torres says with evident admiration and lingering grief. He never cut corners, never took unnecessary risks. Some researchers get what we call ice fever down there. They get so excited about a discovery that they push too hard, ignore safety protocols. David was never like that. He'd stop an entire day's work if he thought conditions weren't right. He had this saying, "The ice will still be here tomorrow. Make sure you are too." Torres's voice catches slightly. He had a family waiting for him. A wife, Jennifer, and 2 daughters, Emma and Sophie, 8 and 11 years old. He called home every Sunday without fail, no matter how busy the week had been. He'd video chat with his girls, help them with homework over satellite internet, read them bedtime stories even though it was the middle of the day for him. He wasn't just a scientist, he was a dad who happened to work in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. And he never forgot which was more important. Ma'ahatawa. The rest of the Station Polaris winter team was equally qualified. Dr. Lisa Gorman, 38, was a microbiologist from Canada, specializing in extremophile organisms, bacteria, and other life forms that survive in the most hostile environments imaginable. She published groundbreaking research on organisms found in deep ice cores, ancient bacteria that had been frozen for hundreds of thousands of years, but could still be revived under the right conditions. Thomas Ashford, 45, was the station's safety officer and technical specialist from New Zealand. Former military, trained in mountain rescue and extreme environment survival. His job was to keep everyone alive and make sure all equipment functioned flawlessly. He was known for his calm demeanour and his obsessive equipment checks. Then there was Commander Neil Pritchard, 52, the station leader and logistics coordinator from Australia. A veteran of 12 Antarctic seasons, he'd seen everything the continent could throw at researchers and had brought his teams home safely every time. The others included Dr. Owen Fletcher, a British physicist studying cosmic ray interactions in ice, Dr. Grace Whitmore, an American psychologist whose official role was team mental health, but who also conducted research on human performance, in isolation, engineers, technicians, a medical officer, a communications specialist, 12 of the best in their fields. These were not reckless adventurers. These were careful professional scientists who had trained for years to work in Antarctica. What happened to them shouldn't have been possible. The winter of 2023 began normally for Station Polaris. The last flight out departed on March 18th, taking the summer crew back to civilization. The Winter 12 watched it disappear into the pale sky, knowing they wouldn't see another aircraft for 4 months. Dr. Fletcher kept a personal audio journal during his time at the station. Some of these recordings were recovered and have been made available to investigators. In an entry from March 20th, 2 days after the last flight, he describes the psychological shift that happens when you realize you're truly alone. The silence is what gets you first. Fletcher's voice, slightly distorted by the recording equipment, echoes with the acoustic deadness of extreme cold. Not the absence of sound, we have plenty of that. Equipment humming, wind howling, people talking, but the silence of knowing there's no one else. We're the only humans for 600 miles, in any direction. When you step outside and look at the horizon, there's nothing. No towns, no roads, no other stations visible, just ice and sky. And you know that if you walked in any direction, you'd die long before you reached another human being. It's liberating and terrifying in equal measure. The team settled into their routine. Research during the day, communal meals in the evening, entertainment and personal time at night. They watched movies, played board games, read books. Every Sunday they had a group dinner, everyone taking turns cooking specialties from their home countries. It was carefully planned normalcy, a structure to hold back the psychological weight of isolation. Their primary research mission was deep ice core drilling. The drill, a specialized piece of equipment worth several $1 million, could extract cylindrical samples of ice from extreme depths. These cores were like time capsules, each layer representing a year of snowfall, compressed over millennia into dense ice. Trapped in those layers were air bubbles, tiny samples of Earth's ancient atmosphere. By analyzing these bubbles, scientists could determine what the climate was like hundreds of thousands of years ago. This data was critical for understanding current climate change. If you want to predict the future, you need to understand the past. And the ice remembered everything. Station Polaris had been drilling deeper than any previous expedition at this location. By late October, they'd reached unprecedented depths, extracting ice that was nearly 800,000 years old. Dr. Hendricks' journal entries from this period, recovered later from his quarters, reveal his excitement and the meticulous care his team took with each core sample. October 15th entry, core sample 247, extracted today. Beautiful clarity. The ice at this depth is compressed so tightly it's almost glass-like. You can see individual layers, each one representing a single year. I'm holding 10,000 years of Earth history in my hands. The air bubbles trapped inside were last exposed to the atmosphere when our ancestors were still learning to farm. It never stops amazing me. October 22nd, reached 2.8 kilometers today. The drill is performing flawlessly despite the extreme pressures. At this depth, the ice should be around 600,000 years old. We're approaching the limit of what we expected to find. Lisa is beside herself with excitement about potential bacterial samples. Thomas triple-checked all safety equipment as always. Another successful day. October 28th, record depth achieved, 3.2 kilometers, nearly 2 miles straight down through the ice sheet. The samples from this depth are extraordinary. The ice formation is different here, compressed in ways we've never seen before. The team is celebrating tonight. We've accomplished what we set out to do. Tomorrow we'll begin the process of logging all samples and preparing for reduced drilling operations. They had done it. reach their research goal with 2 months of winter still ahead. It should have been a triumph. The team should have spent the remaining weeks analysing their samples, writing papers, counting down the days until the first spring flight home. But on October 31st, something unexpected happened. The drill, being retracted for maintenance, suddenly broke through into empty space. The resistance that had been constant for weeks vanished. The drill dropped 6 meters before the emergency brake engaged. The drilling crew, startled by the sudden change, immediately checked all systems. Everything appeared functional. Sensors showed the drill was intact, but the depth readings made no sense. There was empty space below them, a void where only solid ice should exist. Thomas Ashford, ever cautious, immediately called for a work stoppage. The drill was locked in place, no further operations until they understood what happened. Dr. Torres, who reviewed the technical logs months later, explains why this discovery was so alarming. At that depth, under the immense pressure of 2 miles of ice, empty spaces cannot exist naturally. The pressure is too great. Any cavity, any pocket of air or water would be crushed within days, certainly within years. The ice would flow like a very slow liquid and fill any gap, but their instruments detected a stable cavity. A large one too, from what we can tell from the sensor readings. He pulls up the technical data on his computer, pointing to specific readings. Look at this. The void measured approximately 60 meters in diameter. That's 200 feet. A space the size of a small stadium, 2 miles beneath the ice, at temperatures that should be around -80 degrees Fahrenheit. But their temperature sensors showed something even more impossible. -15 degrees. That's still well below freezing, but it's 50-60 degrees warmer than it should be. Torres looks up from his screen, his expression troubled. That kind of thermal anomaly would require a significant heat source, but there's nothing down there. No volcanic activity, no geothermal vents. We've surveyed this area extensively. The nearest active geology is over 300 miles away. There's no natural explanation for that temperature reading. The discovery triggered intense debate among the Station Polaris team. The research protocols were clear. Unexpected findings should be reported immediately to the International Oversight Committee. Other experts should be consulted. Additional equipment should be brought in during the next summer season. But some team members saw it differently. This was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. If they reported it, the site would be swarmed with researchers next summer. Their find would become someone else's project. And more pragmatically, by next summer the void might have collapsed, the ice might have shifted, the opportunity might be gone. Dr. Fletcher's audio journal from November 2nd captures the tension. We've been arguing for 2 days now about what to do. Fletcher's voice sounds tired, strained. David wants to follow protocol, report it, wait for approval, bring in more resources. Lisa and some others want to investigate now while we have the chance. Thomas is on the fence. A safety officer, he's naturally cautious, but even he's curious. Grace is worried about the team psychology, says the debater was creating factions. Neil is caught in the middle, trying to keep everyone happy while making a decision that could define his career. There's a long pause in the recording. I understand both sides. We're scientists, discovery is what we live for, but we're also 2 miles deep in the ice 600 miles from help, in the middle of the Antarctic winter. If something goes wrong down there, we're on our own. David's right to be cautious. But God, I want to know what's down there. We all do. On November 3rd, they reached a compromise. They would send down remote cameras first, document whatever was there, and make decisions based on what they found. No human descent until they understood the environment. It was a reasonable middle ground. The camera system was a small probe, about the size of a soccer ball, equipped with powerful LED lights, multiple cameras, and an array of sensors. It was designed for exactly this kind of exploration, built to withstand extreme cold and pressure. They could control it remotely, seeing everything it saw on monitors in the station's control room. The descent took 45 minutes, the camera slowly lowering on a cable through the narrow drill shaft. The footage, reviewed frame by investigators months later, shows the camera emerging from the drill hole into a vast open space, a cavern. The lights illuminate ice walls that curve upward into a dome-like ceiling. The surface is rough, crystalline, throwing back the camera light in strange glittering patterns. It's beautiful, in an alien way, like the inside of a geode made of ice instead of crystal. The camera pans slowly, the operator's topside carefully documenting everything. The cavern is larger than the initial sensors suggested, closer to 80 meters in diameter. The ceiling rises 20 meters above the drill hole. Then the camera light catches something that makes the operators pause the scan. The walls aren't entirely natural. In several places, the ice shows marks, grooves. They're crude, irregular, but they follow patterns. Long vertical lines, some parallel, some intersecting. They're too regular, too consistent to be natural fractures or pressure cracks. Dr. Gorman's voice, captured on the control room audio recording, breaks the silence. Those are tool marks. Something carved those. Can't be, someone responds. There's nothing down there that could carve ice. No animals, no people. This ice has been frozen solid for hundreds of thousands of years. Look at them, Gorman insists. Those are deliberate, purposeful. I don't know what made them, but they're not natural. The camera continues its scan. More marks appear. Some are shallow, barely visible. Others are deep, gouged into the ice with considerable force. There's no consistent pattern, no obvious writing or pictograms. Just marks. Evidence that something had been here. Something that could manipulate its environment. The camera is lowered to the cavern floor. The ice here is different, smoother, almost polished in places, and there's something embedded in the floor, visible through the semi-clear ice, dark shapes, organic matter of some kind. Dr. Gorman becomes very excited. This is her field. She zooms the camera in, trying to get a better look at the shapes. They look like biological samples. Could be algae, bacterial mats, maybe even preserved multicellular organisms. This is incredible. If there's been liquid water in the ice at this depth, if there's been a stable environment, who knows what kind of life might have evolved in isolation. But one of the engineers notices something else. The temperature readings are fluctuating. Not dramatically, but consistently. Cycling up and down by a few degrees every few minutes. Like something is generating heat intermittently. They spend 3 hours documenting the cavern, filling memory cards with footage and sensor data. When they finally retrieve the camera, the team gathers in the control room to review everything they've captured. The consensus is clear. This is an extraordinary discovery, potentially career-defining, but it also raises profound questions. How did this cavern form? What created the tool marks? What's causing the thermal anomalies? And most intriguingly, what are the biological samples embedded in the ice? Dr. Hendricks advocates for patience. We document everything, we compile a comprehensive report, we send it to the oversight committee. This is too important to rush. We do this right. But the counter-argument is compelling. They have limited time. In 2 months, the winter ends and the summer crew arrives. This becomes a committee project with dozens of researchers and years of bureaucratic approval processes. The 12 of them right now have a chance to be the first humans to explore this space, to make history. Dr. Fletcher's journal entry from November 7th reveals how the decision was made. We voted, democratic process. Should we wait for approval or proceed with a crude exploratory descent? It wasn't even close. 10-2. Only David and Thomas voted to wait. Everyone else wants to go down. Neil, as commander, had the final say. He sided with the majority. We're going down. There's static in the recording. Then Fletcher's voice returns quieter. David pulled me aside after the vote. He looked worried. Really worried. He said something that stuck with me. He said, "Owen, in all my years doing this work, I've learned that Antarctica doesn't give up its secrets easily. And when it does, there's usually a reason they were secrets." I asked him what he meant. He just shook his head and walked away. On November 8th, Dr. Hendricks made a decision that would haunt the investigation. Despite his reservations, despite his instinct that they should wait, he approved the exploratory descent. His journal entry from that evening is brief, the handwriting slightly more hurried than usual. "Team wants to go down. Against my better judgment, I've approved it. If we don't investigate this, someone else will eventually. At least we can do it safely, by our protocols, with our standards. I've insisted on extensive safety measures. We'll take every precaution. It's probably nothing, just an unusual geological formation and some preserved bacteria. We'll take samples, document everything, and be back up for dinner." The final sentence, added later in different ink, reads, "I hope I'm right." 4 days of preparation followed, November 9th through 12th. They assembled equipment, checked and rechecked safety gear, established protocols. Thomas Ashford, despite his reservations about the mission itself, threw himself into preparation with characteristic thoroughness. The descent plan was methodical. A 3-person team would descend by rope through the drill shaft. They would wear full cold-weather survival suits, carry emergency beacons, maintain constant radio contact with the surface. They would spend a maximum of 4 hours in the cavern, collecting samples and documenting the environment. At the first sign of anything unusual, anything dangerous, they would abort and return to the surface immediately. Dr. Hendricks would lead. He was the most experienced, the most qualified. If something went wrong, he had the skills to handle it. Dr. Gorman would accompany him. This was her field, and her expertise in extremophile biology would be invaluable for analysing the organic samples. Thomas Ashford would go as safety officer and technical specialist. If equipment failed or conditions deteriorated, he'd know what to do. The rest of the team would remain topside, monitoring communications, managing the rope systems, ready to assist with retrieval if needed. Dr. Jennifer Hendricks, David's wife, remembers his last phone call home. It was November 12th, the evening before the descent. The call was scheduled, as always, part of his Sunday ritual. He sounded different, Jennifer says, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Even months later, the memory clearly pains her. Usually these calls were upbeat. He'd tell the girls about the research, about the funny things people at the station did, about how beautiful the ice looked in the constant twilight. That night he was quieter, more serious. She pauses, collecting herself. He talked to Emma and Sophie for a long time, longer than usual. He told them how proud he was of them, how much he loved them. He helped Sophie with her math homework even though it was the middle of the day for him, and he should have been sleeping. He read Emma a chapter from the book they'd been working through together, and at the end, before they said goodbye, he made them promise to always look after their mother. Emma asked why he was being so weird, and he laughed it off, said he just missed them more than usual. Jennifer's voice breaks slightly. Then he talked to me alone. He told me about the cavern, about the descent planned for the next day. He said it was routine, just collecting samples, documenting a scientific curiosity. But then he said something that didn't fit. He said, "Jen, if anything seems off down there, even slightly wrong, we're coming right back up, I promise. I'm not taking any chances. I'm coming home to you and the girls." And I remember thinking, why would anything be wrong? It's just ice. It's what you do. You drill ice. You study ice. "It's safe." She looks directly at the camera, but it wasn't in his voice, the confidence, I mean. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I should have asked more questions. I should have told him not to go, but I didn't. I just said I loved him and to be safe. Those were the last words I ever said to my husband. I love you. Be safe. November 13th arrived. The sun, which hadn't risen in 6 weeks, remained below the horizon. Station Polaris operated on artificial time, maintaining a 24-hour schedule for the crew's mental health. It was 8:30 in the morning by the station clock when the 3-person team suited up. The control room was crowded. Commander Pritchard oversaw operations. Dr. Fletcher monitored the scientific instruments. Engineers managed the rope systems and communications. Dr. Whitmore, the psychologist, was there to observe the team's mental state and provide support if needed. The descent began precisely on schedule. Radio communications were recorded automatically, standard protocol for any potentially hazardous operation. These recordings, released to investigators months later, provide the only direct evidence of what the team encountered in the cavern. The initial descent through the drill shaft took just over an hour. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for a person in full cold weather gear. The team descended, one at a time, tethered to ropes controlled by mechanical winches topside. At 500 meters depth, roughly halfway down, the surface team checked in. "David, you're at 500 meters. How's visibility?" There's a pause, the sound of breathing through the radio, the creak of rope and equipment. "Good. Ice walls are strange here though, smooth in places, almost polished. It catches the light from my headlamp in odd ways, like light on water, but it's solid ice." Temperature. Warmer than expected, already up to -40. "That's not right for this depth. Want to abort?" Another pause, longer this time. "No, not yet, but keep monitoring. If it keeps warming, we'll reassess." At 800 meters, Gorman's voice comes through. "The ice is definitely warmer here. I can feel it through my gloves. Still frozen solid, but there's a difference. And I can smell something. Hard to describe. Organic. Like old Earth, maybe." "You're in a sealed suit, Lisa. You shouldn't be smelling anything." "I know, but I am. It's faint, but it's there." At 9:15 a.m., Dr. Hendricks' rope went slack. He'd reached the bottom of the shaft and emerged into the cavern. His breathing quickened, audible over the radio. Not from exertion, but from awe. "Surface, this is David. I'm in the cavern. You need to see this. The camera didn't do it justice. It's massive down here." Thomas Ashford reached the cavern floor 2 minutes later, followed by Dr. Gorman at 9:20. "Temperature is -15 degrees, Hendricks reports. "That's impossible, but confirmed. We can see our breath, but it's not freezing our equipment. Humidity is higher than it should be. There's moisture in the air." "Moisture? How?" "I don't know, but there's a thin layer of frost forming on our suits. Active condensation. There's water vapor down here." For 20 minutes the team explored the cavern floor, their headlamps cutting through the darkness. They collected ice samples, photographed the carved markings on the walls, documented everything they saw. Dr. Gorman became increasingly excited. These organic samples in the ice. They're not bacterial, they're too large. These look like fragments of multicellular organisms, tissue samples, but they're too degraded to identify. I need to get these back to the lab. "Lisa, are you saying there were animals down here?" "I don't know what I'm saying. There shouldn't be anything down here, but these are definitely biological in origin." Then, at 9:47 a.m., Thomas Ashford called out. His voice carried a different tone. Not excitement, but wariness. "I've got something here, northeast section. Looks like a tunnel entrance." The recording captures the crunch of boots on ice as Hendricks and Gorman moved to Ashford's position. There's a long pause, just breathing and the subtle sound of wind, though they're 2 miles underground where wind shouldn't exist. It goes down, Hendricks says finally. His voice is flat, carefully controlled, steep but manageable. The walls are definitely carved. These marks are deliberate. Someone or something made this tunnel. A discussion ensues, captured in full on the recording. Dr. Gorman wants to proceed. She argues that this is what they came for, to explore and document. Ashford suggests marking the location and returning with more equipment, more personnel. He doesn't like the feel of it, he says. Something isn't right. Hendricks, as team leader, has to make the call. After a long pause, he decides they'll explore for 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes. Document what's there, take some samples, then return to the surface. They have the time, they have the equipment, and they may never have another chance. But if anything feels wrong, Hendricks says firmly, anything at all, we leave immediately. Understood? Understood, Gorman and Ashford respond in unison. They descended into the tunnel at 9:52 a.m. The radio signal began to deteriorate immediately. Not unusual this deep in the ice, but concerning nonetheless. The surface team could still hear them, but the audio quality dropped significantly. The tunnel was steep, descending at roughly a 40-degree angle. The walls pressed close on either side, forcing them to move single file. Hendricks led, his headlamp illuminating carved ice that seemed to swallow the light. These carvings are everywhere, Hendricks' voice, distorted by static, reported. All over the walls, the ceiling. They're not random, there's organization to them. Sections that repeat, almost like language maybe, or art. Hard to tell. David, how far have you descended? Commander Pritchard's voice from the surface is tense. Maybe 40, 50 meters. The tunnel is leveling out ahead. I can see an opening. At 10:05 a.m. came the last clear transmission. Tunnel has leveled. We're maybe 50 meters deeper than the cavern floor. There's a chamber ahead, larger than the first cavern. I can see an opening. Something's reflecting our lights. The ice here is different. Clearer. Almost like crystal. And there's... His voice trails off. David, what do you see? Surface. There are structures in there. Not natural formations. Built structures. In the ice. And they're... Static overwhelms his voice. But in the background, barely audible, something else can be heard. A low sound. Almost like humming. Or singing. The radio dissolved completely into white noise. The surface team tried repeatedly to re-establish contact. They adjusted frequencies, boosted the signal, tried every backup protocol. Nothing but the hiss and pop of dead air. Dr. Fletcher's voice, recorded in the control room, captures the growing alarm. Come on, where are you? Someone suggests sending down the backup team immediately. Commander Pritchard considers it, but decides to wait. They still have hours before the team's air supply becomes critical, and sending more people into an unknown situation could make things worse, not better. The waiting was agonizing. Engineers stared at their monitors, watching for any signal. Dr. Whitmore paced the control room, clearly troubled. Commander Pritchard stood by the radio, his hands gripping the edge of the console, until his knuckles turned white. Then, at 10:33 a.m., the radio crackled to life. But the voices on the other end weren't calm anymore. Dr. Gorman, her voice high and tight with panic, almost unrecognizable. We need to leave. Now. David. We need to leave now. Lisa, what's wrong? What happened? No response to the question, just breathing, rapid and shallow. The sound of movement. Boots scrambling on ice. Then Hendricks' voice, but distracted, not quite responding to Gorman's panic. Documenting. We have to document this. David, Gorman again, now screaming. We need to go. It's looking at us. Ashford's voice cut through, his military training evident in his forced calm, despite the fear underneath. The walls, they're not right. Something's watching us from inside the ice. It knows we're here. Team, this is Surface. Abort the mission. Return to the cavern immediately. That's a direct order. Hendricks' voice returns, and now the fear is evident. We're trying. The tunnel, it's changed. The carvings are moving. Carvings can't move, David. Get out of there now. They are moving. The ice is... Oh God, Thomas, look out. A sound like cracking, like something large shifting in ice. Then screaming, multiple voices overlapping, incomprehensible. The transmission cut again. This time it would be hours before they heard anything else. And when they did, only one voice would return. Commander Pritchard activated emergency protocols immediately. A 4-person rescue team suited up, preparing to descend. But the decision was complicated. If the original team was in danger, sending more people into the same environment could result in more casualties. If the team was simply experiencing equipment failure, they might already be making their way back up. Pritchard made the call to wait 30 minutes. If there was no contact by then, the rescue team would descend. Those 30 minutes stretched like hours. The control room was silent except for the constant hiss of the radio and the mechanical hum of the station's life support systems. Everyone stared at the equipment, willing it to produce a voice, a signal, any indication that the team was safe. Someone whispered what everyone was thinking. What did they see down there? No one had an answer. At 11 a.m, no contact. The rescue team prepared to descend. At 11:15, they were at the drill shaft entrance, beginning their descent. At 11:47, someone pointed at the surface monitors. Movement at the drill site. Everyone rushed to the windows. In the darkness, illuminated by the station's external lights, a figure was emerging from the drill shaft, slowly pulling themselves up with mechanical, dreamlike movements. It was Dr. David Hendricks. He was alone. The rescue team, still descending, was recalled immediately. Personnel rushed outside to help Hendricks, to bring him in from the cold. But as they approached, something about him made them hesitate. He was standing next to the drill shaft, completely still, staring at nothing. His face was visible through his helmet's visor. His eyes were open, unblinking despite the extreme cold. His expression was blank. Not relieved, not exhausted, not traumatized. Just empty. David, can you hear us? No response, not even a flicker of recognition. They led him inside. He moved compliantly, feet shuffling mechanically, but seemed utterly unaware of his surroundings. His eyes didn't track movement. He didn't acknowledge the people speaking to him. He was physically present, but mentally gone. In the medical bay, they removed his gear. That's when they noticed the anomalies. His equipment was covered in frost, thick and crystalline, as if he'd been in far colder temperatures than the cavern should have produced. His clothing beneath the survival suit was frozen in places, stiff with ice. His gloves were covered in something dark. Not blood, ice crystals, but with a faint blue tint that shouldn't exist. But when they checked his vital signs, his body temperature was normal. 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Not hypothermic. Not even cold. His skin was warm to the touch, despite the frozen equipment that had been pressed against it. The medical officer, Dr. Paul Chen, documented everything with meticulous care. His report, filed later that evening, reads like something from a psychological thriller. Subject appears physically unharmed. No frostbite, no injuries, no signs of the exertion that should accompany a 2-mile rope climb. Heart rate elevated but steady at 95 beats per minute. Blood pressure normal. Pupil response delayed but present. Subject is conscious but unresponsive to verbal stimuli. Will not make eye contact. Does not react to touch or pain stimuli. Appears catatonic. But there was something else, something that disturbed Dr. Chen enough that he noted it specifically in his report, underlining the words twice. Subject's face shows evidence of crying, frozen tear tracks visible on cheeks, running from inner corners of eyes down to jawline. However, this is medically impossible. At the temperature subject was exposed to, tears would freeze in the eyes themselves, causing severe tissue damage and potentially blindness. Subject shows no such damage. Eyes are clear, undamaged, functioning normally. The tear tracks appear to have been placed there, applied externally. I cannot explain this finding. It is as if someone or something painted tears onto subject's face while he was in the cavern. When they got Hendricks settled in the medical bay, removed the last of his gear, he finally spoke. Just 3 sentences, repeated over and over, in a flat, effectless voice that bore little resemblance to the warm, energetic researcher they knew. They're still down there. They wanted to stay. They're still down there. The words were mechanical, emotionless, like a recording playing on loop. Dr. Whitmore, the station psychologist, was called immediately. She attempted to evaluate him, to reach past whatever trauma had locked his mind away. "David, can you tell me what happened? Where are Lisa and Thomas?" No response, just the same 3 sentences, repeated with exactly the same inflection, exactly the same pauses. They're still down there. They wanted to stay. They're still down there. "What's down there, David? What did you see?" His eyes finally focused, looking directly at Whitmore for the first time, and she later reported that she wished he hadn't. There was something in his gaze that made her step back involuntarily. Not madness, not trauma. Something worse, a certainty, an understanding of something that human minds weren't meant to comprehend. "Everything," he said, just that single word, delivered with complete conviction. Then he returned to staring at the wall, his lips moving silently, forming words no one could hear. Commander Pritchard faced an impossible decision. 2 team members were missing, presumed still in the cavern or the tunnel beyond it. The only person who knew what happened wasn't communicating coherently, and sending another team down meant risking more lives in an environment that had already claimed 2 people and broken a 3rd. He gave the order, "Seal the drill shaft." Whatever was down there had already claimed 2 people and damaged Hendricks beyond recognition. He wouldn't risk more. But before they could implement the seal, Hendricks had a violent reaction. He'd been sitting quietly in the medical bay, staring at the wall, his lips moving in silent conversation with something only he could perceive. Then, suddenly, he was on his feet, moving toward the door, with surprising strength and speed. 4 people moved to stop him. He threw off the first 2 like they weighed nothing, his hands gripping with crushing strength that left bruises. His face remained blank, emotionless, but his body moved with purpose. "They need us," he screamed, his voice raw and desperate. "We have to go back. It's calling us back. We promised." It took 6 people to finally restrain him. Dr. Chen administered a sedative, enough to drop a man half again Hendricks' size. It barely slowed him down. His muscles strained against the restraints, his strength inhuman. "We have to go back. We promised. We promised we'd come home." The sedative finally began to take effect. Hendricks' struggles weakened, his voice dropping from a scream to a whisper. But even as consciousness fled, the words continued, slurred but insistent. "Promised. Promised home. Not our home. Their home. They've been waiting so long in the dark, so alone. We promised we'd stay. We promised." His eyes closed, his body went slack, but his lips continued to move, forming silent words that Dr. Chen tried to read. Later in his report, Chen wrote that he thought Hendricks was saying "come home" over and over, but it could have been "their home" or "we're home." The distinction seemed important, but Chen couldn't be certain which it was. That evening, November 13th, at 10 p.m, the station settled into an uneasy quiet. Hendricks was sedated, strapped to the medical bed, under constant observation. The drill shaft was sealed with a temporary cap, concrete barriers scheduled for the next day. The rest of the team tried to process what had happened, tried to understand how a routine research descent had turned into a disaster. Dr. Whitmore conducted informal check-ins with everyone, assessing their mental state. Most were in shock. 2 of their colleagues were gone. A third was having some kind of psychotic break, and no one understood why. Nothing in their training, nothing in the literature on Antarctic psychology prepared them for this. Dr. Fletcher's audio journal from that night captures the mood. I can't sleep, none of us can. We're all in the common area, not talking, just sitting together. Strength in numbers, I suppose. David's in medical, restrained and sedated, and I can't stop thinking about what he said. They wanted to stay. What does that mean? Why would Lisa and Thomas want to stay down there? It's just ice, just rock and ice and old air. There's nothing down there that could make them want to stay. There's a long pause in the recording, the sound of someone shifting in their chair. Neil has decided we're evacuating as soon as possible. We'll leave everything, just get out. He's already contacted Hobart requesting emergency extraction. But there's a problem, storm coming, big one. They can't fly in storms like this. We might be stuck here for days, maybe a week. Another pause, and in the background other voices can be heard. Someone crying quietly, someone else praying in Spanish. I keep thinking about something David said before we voted to go down. About Antarctica not giving up its secrets easily. About how, when it does, there's usually a reason they were secrets. I think he was right. I think we found something we weren't supposed to find. And now it knows we're here. It knows we're above it. And I don't think it's done with us. November 14th brought new problems. At 6:30 in the morning, Station Polaris experienced its first power fluctuation. The lights dimmed, flickered, then went out completely. The heating system cycled off. The temperature in the station began to drop immediately, the Antarctic cold pressing against the walls like something eager to get in. In Antarctica, in winter, 3 minutes without heat can be life-threatening. The backup generators kicked in automatically at the 2-minute mark, restoring power. But those 2 minutes of darkness and growing cold terrified everyone. In the dark, several people reported hearing something. A sound from outside. Not the wind. Something else, something that sounded almost like voices calling their names. The station engineers ran comprehensive diagnostics. They checked every system, every connection, every backup. Everything checked out perfectly. The generators were fine, running at optimal efficiency. The fuel lines were clear, no blockages or freezes. The electrical system showed no faults, no surges, no drop connections. The switchover to backup power should never have been needed. The primary system hadn't actually failed. According to every instrument, every sensor, every diagnostic tool, the power had never gone out. But everyone had experienced it. The lights had gone out. The temperature had dropped. They had digital thermometer readings showing the temperature in the common area dropping from 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 61 degrees in those 2 minutes. The data existed. The experience was real, but the instrument said it hadn't happened. One of the engineers, Timothy Walsh, expressed what everyone was thinking but didn't want to say. The systems are fine. They're working perfectly. The generators are producing power. The distribution systems are functioning normally. So either our instruments are all malfunctioning in the exact same way at the exact same time, giving us false environmental readings while functioning perfectly otherwise, or... He trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Or what? Commander Pritchard asked, though he clearly didn't want to hear the answer. Or something is interfering with our systems in a way our instruments can't detect. Something that can affect physical reality, temperature, light, power flow, but doesn't show up on any sensors. Something that exists outside normal parameters. The implications hung in the air like the cold that had temporarily invaded their sanctuary. What could interfere with a nuclear-powered research station's electrical systems without showing up on any diagnostic equipment? What could drop the temperature of an insulated space by 7 degrees in 2 minutes without triggering any alarms? No one wanted to suggest the answer that kept circling everyone's mind. Something from the cavern, something that had followed Hendricks back up. November the 15th at 3:30 in the morning. A maintenance worker named Peter Zhao was doing his rounds, checking that all the environmental systems were functioning properly, despite the previous day's mysterious fluctuation. He entered the common area and froze. Dr. Hendricks was standing in the middle of the room. The lights were off. He was just standing there in the darkness, wearing only the light hospital clothing, standing barefoot on the cold floor. He should have been in medical, strapped down, sedated into unconsciousness, but here he was, standing motionless in the dark common room, facing the north wall. Zhao later reported that his first thought was wondering how Hendricks had gotten out. The restraints were industrial strength. The sedation was massive. But here he was, and there was something profoundly wrong about the way he stood. Too still. Too rigid. Like a statue. Like something pretending to be human, but not quite getting the posture right. Dr. Hendricks. David. How did you get out here? No response, not even a twitch of acknowledgement. Zhao approached slowly, reaching for the light switch. When the fluorescent lights flickered on, Hendricks didn't react to the sudden brightness, didn't blink, didn't turn, just continued staring at the blank wall as if it held the secrets of the universe. Zhao moved closer, reaching out to touch Hendricks' shoulder. The moment his fingers made contact, Hendricks spoke. His voice was barely a whisper, but in the silent station, it carried. Can you hear them singing? Zhao felt ice run down his spine. Singing? Who's singing, David? In the ice. They're singing in the ice. They want us to hear. They want us to understand. They want us to come home. Zhao heard nothing but the constant hum of the station systems and the eternal wind outside, howling around the buildings like a living thing. There's no singing, David. Let's get you back to medical. When Zhao tried to guide Hendricks back, the researcher turned to look at him, and Zhao later told investigators that he'd never forget the look in Hendricks' eyes. Not madness, not confusion, not the blank stare of catatonia, but clarity, complete, absolute clarity. The clarity of someone who finally understands the true nature of reality and finds everyone else blind and stumbling. You'll hear it soon, Hendricks said calmly, peacefully, with the certainty of prophecy. Everyone will. It's getting louder. Every hour it gets louder. They're moving closer to the surface. They want to meet us. They've been waiting so long, so alone in the dark. And we're going to them. All of us. You'll want to go. When you hear them, you'll understand. You'll want to go. By the time Zhao got Hendricks back to the medical bay, Dr. Chen was frantic. The restraints were still locked, still secure. The leather straps showed no signs of stretching or breaking. The sedation should have kept Hendricks unconscious for at least 8 more hours. His blood work confirmed the sedative was still in his system at therapeutic levels. But somehow he'd gotten out, walked through the station, and stood in the darkness listening to something no one else could hear. They increased his sedation. Triple dose. Enough to put him into a medically induced coma if necessary. Enough to potentially cause respiratory depression. But they couldn't risk him hurting himself or others. Couldn't risk him getting outside in his condition. In the Antarctic cold, he'd be dead in minutes. But as the drugs took effect and Hendricks' eyes finally closed, he smiled. A peaceful, genuine smile. The first real emotion he'd shown since returning from the cavern. And he whispered one last thing, so quietly that Dr. Chen had to lean close to hear. They're coming closer. every hour, closer to the surface. Soon they won't have to call us. They'll be here. They'll come up through the ice, and we'll see them. We'll finally see them. And they're beautiful. They're so beautiful. That same day, November 15th, 3 other team members reported nightmares. Dr. Fletcher, Timothy Walsh the engineer, and Rachel Park, Dr. Gorman's young research assistant. They came to Dr. Whitmore independently, none knowing the others had also sought her out, all describing the same dream with disturbing consistency. Dr. Whitmore's clinical notes, released to investigators, document their testimonies with growing alarm. Subject 1, Dr. Owen Fletcher, reports recurring dream beginning November 14th. Dream involves walking through ice tunnels. The tunnels descend deeper and deeper into the ice sheet. Ambient temperature in dream is cold but not freezing. Visibility extends approximately 20 meters before darkness obscures further progress. Subject hears voices calling his name. The voices sound like colleagues, specifically identifies Dr. Hendricks, Dr. Gorman, and Thomas Ashford. When subject attempts to locate the voices, the tunnels branch and descend further. Subject reports becoming aware within the dream that he is not searching for the voices but being led by them. The voices are guiding him somewhere. Subject wakes just as he reaches a chamber at the end of the tunnel. Reports feeling intense disappointment upon waking. Notes that he has never been to the drill site, never viewed footage of the cavern interior, yet in the dream knew exactly what the tunnels looked like. Carved walls, smooth floors, blue-tinted ice. Subject 2, Timothy Walsh, reports nearly identical dream structure. Ice tunnels, descent, voices calling, adds detail that the ice walls seem to pulse in the dream, rhythmically like breathing or a heartbeat. Subject estimates pulse rate at approximately 16 beats per minute, unusually slow. Reports that the voices promised to show him something wonderful if he continued walking deeper. Subject woke, feeling compelled to go outside. To walk to the drill site required 15 minutes to overcome this compulsion. States he stood at the exterior door for several minutes, hand on the lock, before rational thought returned. Subject 3, Rachel Park, reports same dream structure with disturbing additional detail. States that Dr. Gorman was one of the voices calling her name. Dr. Gorman's voice sounded happy, excited, enthusiastic, called Park to come see what we found. Park reports that in the dream she felt no fear, only curiosity and eagerness. She wanted to reach the chamber, wanted to see what had excited Dr. Gorman. Upon waking, felt profound disappointment that she hadn't completed the journey. Reports lingering compulsion to finish what I started, though she has never been in the cavern and doesn't rationally know what this means. Dr. Whitmore's final note on November 15th reads, 3 subjects, no prior discussion, reporting identical dream content, down to specific details. This is statistically impossible as coincidence. Dream content includes information subjects should not possess, such as the appearance of the cavern tunnels and the presence of carved walls. Hypothesis: subjects are experiencing shared hallucination or are being influenced by external stimulus. Recommend immediate, full psychological evaluation of all team members and urgent evacuation if possible. Whatever affected Dr. Hendricks appears to be spreading to others through unknown vector. Situation may escalate. But evacuation wasn't possible. The storm was now 10 hours away. Our meteorological data showed it intensifying. A Category 5 Antarctic cyclone, one of the most powerful storm systems on Earth. Winds forecasted at over 200 miles per hour. Temperatures during the storm expected to drop to negative 120 degrees Fahrenheit with wind chill. Flying in those conditions wasn't just dangerous, it was suicide. They were trapped for a minimum of 72 hours, possibly longer if the storm stalled or was followed by secondary systems. November 16th brought continued equipment malfunctions that defied explanation. The radio system became increasingly unreliable. Transmissions to Hobart were garbled, filled with static that technicians couldn't filter out. At times, the static resolved into what sounded like voices, but in no language anyone recognized. The phonemes were wrong, the rhythm alien. Technicians initially assumed it was interference from the approaching storm, ionospheric disturbances affecting the radio waves propagating through the atmosphere. Then someone ran an analysis on the interference. The static had structure. It wasn't random noise. The voices, if that's what they were, came in rhythmic pulses, like speech, like song. 16 pulses per minute. The same rhythm as the ice walls in the dreams. The same rhythm as a very slow heartbeat. No one mentioned this observation aloud. But everyone who saw the analysis noticed it. And everyone understood the implication. Something was using their communication system. Something was trying to reach them through the radio. Trying to communicate, trying to call them. The satellite uplink worked intermittently, dropping connection at random intervals. They managed to send sporadic status updates to Hobart, brief messages confirming they were alive and locked down for the storm. But detailed communication was impossible. Each message cut off mid-transmission, ending in bursts of static that, if you listened carefully, almost sounded like singing. That afternoon, Rachel Park discovered that the food storage had been disturbed. She'd gone to inventory supplies before the storm, standard protocol to ensure they had adequate provisions. What she found made her call Commander Pritchard immediately. Nothing was taken, nothing was spoiled or damaged, but items had been rearranged, extensively, deliberately. Packages that had been on the top shelf were now on the bottom. Items that had been in the freezer had been moved to dry storage. Canned goods that had been organized alphabetically were now arranged by size. The frozen food was organized not by type but by color of packaging. Dried goods were sorted by weight rather than category. But most disturbing was the fresh produce. The small amount they had, vegetables from the hydroponic greenhouse, had been arranged on a table, set out in a pattern, forming something that looked almost like a symbol, or a map. Circles within circles, with lines radiating outward. It meant nothing to anyone, but it was clearly intentional. Commander Pritchard ordered a full search of the station. Every room, every storage area, every tunnel. Looking for evidence of an intruder, though how an intruder could have reached Station Polaris in the middle of Antarctic winter, how they could have survived outside, how they could have entered without triggering any alarms, was impossible to explain. The search took 3 hours. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the snow outside, no one hiding in storage areas or unused rooms. The station security had not been breached. The locks were all engaged. The motion sensors showed no unauthorized movement. But the food had been moved. The pattern had been created. Someone or something had spent hours in their storage area, reorganizing supplies according to some logic no human understood. Maybe one of us did it while sleepwalking, Dr. Fletcher suggested. It was the only rational explanation, the only one that didn't require believing in impossibilities. Who? Pritchard asked. We're all accounted for. We have security logs. And it would take hours to move all this. Someone would have noticed one of us missing for that long. No one had an answer. No one wanted to say what they were all thinking, that something else was in the station with them. Something that could move through their spaces undetected, could manipulate physical objects, could create patterns and symbols while they slept, could exist alongside them without triggering any of their sensors or security measures. Something from the cavern, something that had come up with Hendricks. That evening, November 16th, at 7:45 p.m, Dr. Hendricks had his most violent episode yet. He'd been in a medically induced coma for over 24 hours. 3 times the normal sedation dose, Dr. Chen had been monitoring his vital signs closely, increasingly disturbed by the readings. Hendricks' brain activity was profoundly abnormal. Too much activity for someone who should be essentially unconscious. The EEG patterns looked almost like REM sleep, like he was dreaming, but far more intense than normal dream activity. Multiple regions of his brain were firing simultaneously, creating patterns Chen had never seen in 20 years of medicine. And the pattern itself was strange. The brain activity pulsed 16 cycles per minute, the same rhythm as everything else, the same rhythm as the heartbeat in the ice. Then, at 7:45 p.m., without any warning, Hendricks' eyes snapped open. He sat up, breaking the reinforced wrist restraints like they were paper. The leather straps simply parted, not torn but separated, as if they'd decided they no longer wanted to hold him. Dr. Chen, alone with him in the medical bay, backed away and hit the emergency alert. Hendricks was off the bed before Chen could reach the door, moving toward the exit with mechanical precision. His movements were profoundly wrong, jerky, unnatural, like someone who'd never walked before and was trying to remember how legs worked. "Dr. Hendricks, you need to stay in bed. You're not well." Hendricks turned to look at Chen, and the medical officer would later say that this was the most terrifying moment of his life, because the thing that looked at him wasn't entirely David Hendricks anymore. The face was right, the body was right, but something about the eyes was wrong. The way they focused, the way they perceived, like they were seeing more than a human should be able to see, like they were looking through Chen rather than at him. "I'm not unwell," Hendricks said, his voice flat and strange, the pitch slightly off. "I'm awake. For the first time in my life, I'm truly awake, and they're showing me such beautiful things. Things humans stopped being able to see millions of years ago. Things we forgot how to perceive, but they remember. They remember everything, and they want to share. Who's showing you? Who are they?" Hendricks smiled. It was a terrible smile, too wide, lasting too long, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. "The ones who've been waiting so long. They were here before the ice, before the cold, when Antarctica was warm and green and full of life. They watched it die, watched it freeze, and they went down into the deep ice. And they've been waiting for something to come, waiting for us. They've been so alone, so patient, and now we're here, and they want to welcome us home." Other staff arrived, responding to the alert. 6 people filled the medical bay. Hendricks ignored them, focused entirely on the door, on getting outside, on returning to the ice. "We have to go back," he suddenly screamed, his calm breaking like a dam. "We have to go back. They need us. We promised. We promised we'd come home. We promised." It took all 6 staff members to restrain him. Hendricks fought with inhuman strength, throwing off people who tried to grab him. He was screaming continuously now, words barely coherent, overlapping, colliding. "They need us. The ice is singing. We have to answer. They're calling. They're calling us home. We have to go home. They've been alone for so long, millions of years, alone in the dark. And we're their family. We're their children. Don't you understand? We came from them. Life came from them. And they want us back. They want to show us. They want us to see, to understand, to join them. We promised we'd come home." They finally got him down, 4 people holding him while Dr. Chen and another medic administered another massive dose of sedative, enough to stop his heart if they weren't careful. But it was the only way to stop him from hurting himself or others. As the drugs took effect, Hendricks' struggles weakened, but his voice continued, growing softer but no less intense, no less certain. "It's calling. It's calling all of us. You hear it. I know you hear it. In your dreams, in the static on the radio, in the wind outside. It's calling. We promised we'd come home. Not our home, their home. They've been waiting so long in the dark, in the ice. They found us. We drilled down and they found us. And they recognized us. They remember us. And we're going home. All of us. We're going home, home, home. His voice faded to silence. His eyes closed. His body went limp. But even unconscious, heavily restrained, sedated to the point of medical danger, his lips continued to move, forming words no one could hear. Dr. Chen attached an EEG to monitor brain activity. The readings were impossible. Hendricks' brain activity hadn't decreased with the sedation. If anything, it had increased. His brain was more active now than when he was conscious and screaming, and the pattern was clearer now. 16 cycles per minute. Perfect rhythm. Like his brain was synchronizing with something. Like something was using his neural tissue to broadcast a signal. Dr. Whitmore, who witnessed the episode, was visibly shaken. She pulled Commander Pritchard aside, away from the others. "That wasn't a psychotic break," she said, her professional composure completely shattered. "That wasn't trauma or stress or any psychological condition I've ever seen or read about. That was conversion. He's been converted. Something has rewritten his mind, changed what he wants, what he believes, what he perceives as reality. He's not trying to escape confinement, he's trying to return to something, and he's absolutely certain it's right." Pritchard asked the question everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to voice. "Can it spread? Can whatever happened to him happen to others?" Whitmore didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper, shaking with fear. 3 people are already having the dreams. The same dreams. How is that possible, unless something is influencing all of them? Some kind of mimetic agent, spreading person to person. Or worse, something external that can project directly into our minds. If it can influence dreams, what else can it influence? Our thoughts, our perceptions, our desires. How long before more people start hearing the singing? How long before someone else tries to go back to the cavern? How long before we all want to go? She looked at Pritchard, her eyes wide with terror. "I think we're being called. All of us, not captured or attacked. Called. Invited. And the worst part is, I think some part of us wants to answer. Deep down, in some ancient part of our brain that predates conscious thought, we recognize the call, and we want to go home." November 17th. The storm was 6 hours away. Commander Pritchard made the final decision to evacuate Station Polaris the moment the weather cleared, regardless of whether it was safe to fly. They would take their chances with the storm's tail end, with marginal visibility and dangerous winds, rather than stay another day. Because he knew deep down that 6 hours might be too long, that whatever was calling them from the ice was getting stronger, getting closer, and soon the call would be too strong to resist. He ordered a complete lockdown. Everyone moved to the main building, the most structurally sound facility. The connecting tunnels were sealed with emergency bulkheads. Emergency supplies were staged in case the storm lasted longer than forecasted. Hendricks, still unconscious, but with his brain burning with impossible activity, was moved under heavy guard. 2 people at all times. Orders to restrain anyone who tried to approach him or leave the building. The wind had already picked up, howling around the station's walls like something alive. The temperature was dropping rapidly, down to negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind chill reaching negative 120. Outside in that wind, in that cold, death would come in minutes. The moisture in your eyes would freeze. Your lungs would frost with each breath. Your blood would thicken. You would fall into hypothermia so quickly you'd barely understand what was happening before you lost consciousness and died. But Dr. Fletcher, listening to the wind, thought it sounded like singing. November 17th, 9:30 p.m. 3.5 hours until the storm reached full intensity. Dr. Fletcher's audio journal from this period provides our last detailed account from inside Station Polaris. His voice is tight, controlled, but the fear underneath is unmistakable. We're all in the main building now, 12 of us, though it should be 13. 43 people crammed into a space designed for 20 during summer operations. With only 12, it feels empty. Every sound echoes. Every footstep seems too loud. No one's sleeping. No one's even trying. We're just sitting in the common area, not talking much, just waiting. For the storm, for rescue, for something to make sense. He pauses, and in the background you can hear the wind building, a rising howl that seems to carry words within it. David's in the medical bay, still unconscious. Dr. Chen has him on continuous monitoring. His brain activity is off the charts. Chen says it's like he's having the most vivid dreams imaginable, but magnified 1,000 times. Every part of his brain firing simultaneously, creating patterns Chen's never seen. What dreams? What's he seeing in there? What's he experiencing that makes him so desperate to go back? Another pause, longer. Someone in the background asks a question that's too quiet to make out. Fletcher doesn't answer, or the answer isn't recorded. Rachel, Tim and I, the three of us who had the dreams, we've been talking. We didn't want to admit it to Dr. Whitmore, didn't want to sound crazy, but we're all still hearing it. The singing. It's faint, but it's there, under the wind, under the sound of the station systems, under everything. A rhythm, a melody, like a song being sung by voices that aren't quite voices. And the worst part is, his voice drops to barely above a whisper. The worst part is, it's beautiful. I want to hear it more clearly. I want to understand what it's saying. I catch myself walking toward the walls, pressing my ear against the metal, trying to hear it better. And I'm not the only one. Rachel was doing it this afternoon. Tim too. Dr. Whitmore noticed and told us to stop. Told us it's not real, that we're experiencing auditory hallucinations from stress. But it is real. We all hear it, and it's getting louder. Every hour it gets a little louder, a little clearer, like whatever's making it is getting closer. Static interrupts the recording briefly. When Fletcher's voice returns, it sounds different, more distant, dreamy. We tried to talk to Dr. Chen about it, asked if there's a medical explanation. Hallucinations from carbon dioxide buildup maybe, or low-frequency sound causing vibrations in our auditory systems. He ran tests. Our blood oxygen is fine. He set up acoustic monitors. They detect nothing unusual. Our brain activity looks normal. We're not hallucinating. We're not experiencing psychosis. We're just hearing something that's really there but that instruments can't detect. Something that exists outside normal sensory parameters. Commander Pritchard is trying to keep everyone calm, but I can see it in his eyes. In everyone's eyes. We're terrified. Pritchard's been in Antarctica for 12 seasons, seen equipment failures, medical emergencies, people cracking under the isolation, and he's terrified. What does that say about our situation? What does it mean that our most experienced member, someone who's survived everything the ice can throw at people, is afraid? The recording continues, but Fletcher is silent for a long moment, just the sound of his breathing and the endless wind that seems to be forming words. I've been thinking about what David wrote in his journal. We're going home, just not the home we left. What did he mean? Where is home for something that lives beneath 2 miles of ice? Something that's been there for millions of years? Something that might be older than humanity itself? And why does the thought of going there feel less terrifying than it should? Why does part of me, a part I don't want to acknowledge, want to see it, want to understand, want to answer the call? I should be afraid. I'm afraid. But there's another feeling underneath the fear. Curiosity, anticipation, recognition. Like some ancient part of my brain remembers this song. Like I heard it before, millions of years ago, before I was human. And it's calling me back to something I forgot, something we all forgot. And that feeling is growing stronger every hour. Soon it might be stronger than the fear. Soon I might want to answer more than I want to survive. The recording ends abruptly, cutting off mid-breath. At 10 p.m, 1 hour before the storm reached full intensity, Peter Zhao reported seeing lights outside. Not the station's external lights, which had been shut down to conserve power and reduce wind resistance. Different lights, moving between the buildings that should have been completely dark. Commander Pritchard checked the security cameras. The feeds showed nothing but darkness and blowing snow, but multiple people confirmed seeing the lights through the windows. Blue-white, pale, like ice catching starlight. Moving with purpose through the Antarctic night. Dancing, weaving, almost playful in their movement. It's the aurora, someone suggested, desperate for a rational explanation. The southern lights were common this time of year. Beautiful curtains of coloured light caused by solar radiation, interacting with Earth's atmosphere. But the aurora didn't move like this, didn't weave between buildings, didn't seem to pulse in rhythm with the singing that half the station could now hear, didn't approach the windows as if curious about the people inside. At 10:15 p.m, Dr. Fletcher admitted to Dr. Whitmore that 7 people could now hear the singing. Not just him, Rachel and Tim. 4 others. 7 out of 12. More than half the station infected with whatever mimetic agent was spreading through them. At 10:30 p.m, all the lights in the station flickered. Not gradually, not with warning. They were on, and then they were off, and then they were on again. The transition took less than a second. But in that moment of darkness, something changed. Dr. Fletcher later reported that in those 3 seconds, the singing became deafeningly loud. Not painful, but overwhelming, filling his head with melody, a meaning he couldn't quite grasp. And he understood, in that moment of darkness, what the song was saying, what it had been saying all along, not in words, but in emotion, in concept, in pure meaning transmitted directly to his consciousness. Come home, we've been waiting. We remember you. You're our children. Come home, come back to the ice, come back to the beginning. Come home. When the lights came back on, Fletcher was standing at the door, to the outside. His hand was on the lock. He didn't remember moving there. He didn't remember deciding to leave. But there he was, his fingers on the mechanism that would open the door and let the negative 120-degree air rush in. And he wasn't alone. 6 other people were also standing at exit points, their hands reaching for doors, for hatches, for emergency exits, all of them moving unconsciously, drawn by the call, ready to walk out into the storm to answer the singing. Dr. Whitmore grabbed Fletcher, pulled him away from the door with physical force. "Owen, what are you doing?" He blinked, looking down at his hand on the lock as if seeing it for the first time, like watching someone else's hand, someone else's body moving without his permission. I heard, there's something out there, something calling. I have to. No, you need to stay inside. Whatever you're hearing isn't real. It's the isolation, the stress, the fear. You're not thinking clearly. But Fletcher knew that wasn't true. He was thinking very clearly. Too clearly. Clearer than he'd ever thought in his life. And he knew with absolute certainty that something outside was calling for them. All of them. That it had been waiting in the ice for longer than human civilization. That it remembered something humans had forgotten. That it wanted to show them, wanted to welcome them, wanted to bring them home. And part of him desperately wanted to go. Commander Pritchard ordered everyone away from exits. The 7 people who'd been unconsciously drawn to the doors were separated, put under observation. Dr. Whitmore tried to talk to them, tried to understand what they'd experienced in those 3 seconds of darkness. They all described the same thing. The singing becoming clear, the meaning becoming obvious. the overwhelming desire to go outside, to walk south toward the drill site, to return to the ice. At 11 p.m, the storm was 30 minutes away. The wind had reached 70 miles per hour. The temperature outside was negative 95 degrees, and still 7 people stood at windows, staring south towards the drill site, their lips moving silently, as if singing along with something only they could hear. At 11:30 p.m, Dr. Hendricks woke from his sedation. The medical monitor showed impossible readings. His heart rate was 30 beats per minute, far too slow for a conscious person, but he was conscious, alert, sitting up in bed. The guard stationed with him, a technician named Robert Mills, immediately called for Dr. Chen. But before Chen could arrive, Hendricks turned to look at Mills and smiled. It was a peaceful smile, genuine, the first truly human expression since he'd returned from the cavern. "They're here," Hendricks said calmly, peacefully, like someone greeting expected guests. "They came through the storm. They came to bring us home." "Who's here, Dr. Hendricks?" Mills asked, though he didn't want to know the answer. "The others. Lisa, Thomas, everyone from before. They're outside. They want us to join them. They want to show us what they found. It's so beautiful, Robert. You can't imagine how beautiful it is. The ice remembers everything, every moment, every life, every thought. It's all there, preserved in crystal, waiting. And they can show us, they can let us see, let us remember, let us go home." Mills looked at the security monitors. The cameras showed nothing but the storm now, complete whiteout conditions, wind-driven snow moving at over 100 miles per hour. Nothing could survive out there. Nothing could move in those conditions. "There's no one out there. It's just the storm." Hendricks stood up, the remaining restraints snapping as easily as the others had. He walked to the window, pressing his hand against the reinforced glass. His breath fogged the surface, and in the fog, he drew something. A symbol. Circles within circles, with lines radiating outward. The same symbol that had been arranged with the produce. The same symbol Mills suddenly realized that he'd been drawing unconsciously on his notepad all evening, without knowing why. "What do you see out there, Dr. Hendricks?" "Everything," Hendricks replied, his voice filled with wonder. "I see everything now. The ice isn't hiding it anymore. The storm is bringing them closer. They've been waiting so long, waiting for us. We drilled down and woke them up. And they remember us. They remember making us. Millions of years ago, when the world was young, they were here. They built things, created things, made life. And we're their children. All life on Earth are their children. And now they want us to come home. And we're going, all of us, tonight, going home." Dr. Chen arrived with security personnel. They found Hendricks standing at the window, calm and smiling. When they tried to guide him back to bed, he didn't resist. He moved compliantly, peacefully, like someone who knows everything is proceeding exactly as it should. But as they secured him with reinforced restraints, triple-check this time, he spoke to everyone in the room. His voice was quiet, but carried perfect certainty. "You'll understand soon, when the lights go out again, when the singing is all you can hear. You'll understand what they're offering, and you'll want to go too. Everyone wants to go home. It's the most basic desire, to return to where we came from, to be with our family. And they're our family, the oldest family, the first family, and they're calling us back." Commander Pritchard was summoned to the medical bay. He looked at Hendricks, at the peaceful expression, at the absolute certainty, and felt his resolve weaken. Part of him, a part he didn't want to acknowledge, understood what Hendricks was saying. Part of him could almost hear the singing too. Part of him wanted to know what was out there in the ice, what had been waiting, what remembered humanity. But he pushed those thoughts down and made his voice hard. "Lock down this room. maximum restraints. No one in or out except essential medical staff. If he speaks, don't engage, don't listen. Just maintain life support and wait for evacuation. But as Pritchard turned to leave, Hendricks spoke one more time, and his words would haunt the commander for the rest of his life. "It's too late, Neil. You heard it too. I can see it in your eyes, in everyone's eyes. We all heard it. And once you hear them, they never let go. They're patient. They've waited for millions of years. They can wait a few more hours, but you'll come. We'll all come. Because they're calling us home. And home is where we belong. Home is where we've always belonged. And tonight, finally, we're going home." At 11:47 p.m, 13 minutes before the storm reached its peak intensity, Hendricks moved to the radio and, before anyone could stop him, sent one final distress call. His speed was impossible. One moment he was in bed, restrained and docile. The next he was across the room, his hands on the radio controls, his voice broadcasting across emergency frequencies. The restraints lay on the bed, not broken but opened, as if they'd unlocked themselves. "Something's wrong. The ice. We shouldn't have gone down there." Security grabbed him, pulled him away from the radio, but the damage was done. The message had been sent. In Hobart, thousands of miles away, operators heard those words and knew something terrible had happened at Station Polaris. Hendricks didn't fight as they restrained him again. He just turned to face the 12 people in the room, his expression serene, and spoke his final words. Words that would be remembered, analysed, debated by investigators for months. "It's time. We understand now. All of us. The ice remembers everything, every life, every moment, every thought. And it's been waiting to show us, waiting to bring us home. And tonight, finally, we're going, all of us together, going home." The lights went out. This time, the backup generators didn't kick in. The emergency lighting didn't activate. The station plunged into absolute darkness. Complete. Total. The kind of darkness that only exists in the Antarctic winter, thousands of miles from any light pollution, under a sky that hasn't seen the sun in months. And in that darkness, everyone heard it. Not just the 7 who'd been affected. Everyone. All 12 remaining members of Station Polaris. The singing, no longer distant or subtle. It filled the station, filled their minds. A melody that bypassed their ears and resonated directly in their consciousness. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't frightening. It was beautiful. Welcoming. Calling them home. Dr. Fletcher's final audio recording, recovered months later from a device that continued recording in the darkness, captures what happened next. His voice is calm, almost dreamy. "The lights are out, but I can see, not with my eyes, with something else, some other sense I didn't know I had. I can see the ice, all of it, stretching down through the drill shaft, down through the cavern, down through the tunnel, down to the chamber. And I can see them. The ones who've been waiting. They're not monsters. They're not demons. They're just old. So very old. Older than humanity. Older than mammals. Older than anything that's ever lived on the surface. They've been down there since before the ice was ice. Since the world was warm. Since Antarctica was green. The singing is their memory. Every note is a year. Every harmony is a life. Billions of years. Trillions of lives. All preserved in the ice. All remembered. And they want to share it. They want us to remember too. To be part of the song. Part of the ice. Part of the waiting. It's not death they're offering. It's preservation. Eternal preservation. We'll be like them, sleeping in the ice, dreaming, waiting, singing, forever. And it's not frightening. It's peaceful, like going home after a very long journey, like returning to somewhere we've always belonged but forgot about. I can see the others moving toward the doors. We're all moving toward the doors. Not because we're controlled. We're not puppets. We're just understanding. Finally understanding what we were always meant to do. This is why we came to Antarctica. Not to study the ice, to return to it. To answer the call that's been echoing through human DNA since we first crawled out of the ocean. The call to go home. To go back to our oldest ancestors. The ones who made us. The ones who've been waiting. David's walking with us. He's smiling. He's finally at peace. And behind him, I can see Lisa and Thomas. They're here. They came back through the storm. Their bodies are ice now, but their minds are still there. Still conscious. Still singing. Still calling us home. And they're happy. So happy. Happier than they ever were in life. Because they understand now. They know what we all forgot. And they want to share it with us. The doors are opening. I can feel the cold, but it doesn't hurt. It feels like relief. Like shedding a weight I didn't know I was carrying. The storm is beautiful. The ice is beautiful. Everything is beautiful. We're going outside now. All of us. Walking into the storm. Into the ice. Going home. Finally going home. The recording continues for several more minutes, but it's just wind. The terrible howling wind of the Antarctic cyclone. Then static. Then a new sound. Faint. Distant. But unmistakable. Singing. 12 voices. Harmonizing. Not in panic. Not in fear. Not in desperation. In joy. In completion. In something that sounds like welcome. Like coming home after a long absence. 12 voices singing in the darkness. Singing in the ice. And then, silence. November 20th, 3 days later, the storm cleared. The rescue team launched from Hobart at first light. A combined operation, Australian and American military, with support from multiple nations. The flight took 8 hours, the helicopters pushing the limits of their range, the pilots fighting turbulence and residual winds every kilometre. Captain Douglas Wright led the rescue team. He'd flown Antarctic rescue missions for 15 years, extracted personnel from collapsed buildings, from crashed aircraft, from medical emergencies in the most remote places on Earth. He thought he'd seen everything the continent could throw at people. He was wrong. His official report, filed with both governments, is dry and clinical, full of technical language and careful observations. But in interviews conducted later, away from official channels, the emotion breaks through. We could see the station from 5 kilometers out, Wright says, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup, even though the interview is conducted in a warm office in Hobart, months after the incident. It looked normal, lights on in some buildings. The structures were intact. The storm hadn't done any major damage that we could see from the air. I remember thinking, good, they rode it out. We'll get them warmed up, checked out medically, and get them home. Standard rescue. In and out. He pauses, staring at something beyond the camera. Something only he can see. We landed 200 meters from the main building. Approached on foot. The wind had died down, but it was still negative 90 degrees. Brutal cold. The kind that makes your equipment creak and your breath freeze in the air. And the first thing I noticed was the doors. The exterior doors were open. All of them standing wide open. The heat was just pouring out into the Antarctic air, visible as a shimmer. An emergency protocol says you never leave the doors open. Never. The cold will invade the station in minutes. The heating system will fail trying to compensate. People will die. We called out, announced ourselves, standard rescue protocol. Nothing. Just wind and the hum of the generators still running inside. So we went in. Wright's hands tighten on his cup, knuckles whitening. The station was intact, powered up, heated to normal temperature. Everything functional. There was food on plates in the common area. Still warm. We touched them and they were warm. Coffee cups still had liquid in them that hadn't frozen. We found a computer in the lab with a document open, a research report. Someone had been in the middle of typing. The last sentence was incomplete. The ice core samples from 2.8 kilometers show unusual crystalline formations that suggest that's where it stopped, mid-thought, like someone had just stood up and walked away. Personal items were everywhere, phones charging on bedside tables, books open with page holders, still in place, a chess game set up mid-move in the common area, someone's knitting project left on a chair with the needles still in the yarn. It looked like everyone had been interrupted in the middle of normal activities, like they'd all simultaneously decided to stop what they were doing and leave. But why? Why would they all leave at once? Why would they go outside in the middle of a Category 5 cyclone? Wright sets down his cup, his hands trembling slightly. We searched every building, every room, every closet, every storage area. Nothing. No one. No bodies. No signs of struggle or violence. No blood. No indication that anything bad had happened. It just looked like everyone had left. But there were anomalies, small things that didn't make sense. The medical bay showed signs of restraints being used. Heavy restraints, the kind we use for violent patients. But they were opened, not broken, lying neatly on the bed. And there were scratch marks on the walls, deep scratches, like someone with fingernails had gouged into solid metal. But the marks weren't panicked or random. They formed patterns, symbols. The same symbol repeated over and over. Circles within circles with lines radiating outward. In the control room we found audio equipment still recording. Days of recordings. We listened to some of them, people talking about hearing singing, about dreaming the same dreams, about something calling them from the ice. And the later recordings, the later ones were just sounds, wind, static, and underneath, if you listened carefully, something that might have been voices, singing. Wright looks up and there's something haunted in his eyes. We expanded the search outside. In Antarctic winter, leaving the station without proper gear means death in minutes. With full gear, maybe an hour before the cold winds. But we had to check. We found footprints. He pauses, struggling with the memory. 12 sets of footprints. Leading away from the main building. They were barefoot, no boots, no cold weather gear. Barefoot in negative 90-degree cold. Barefoot in the middle of a cyclone with winds over 100 miles per hour. It's impossible. The cold would freeze tissue instantly. Feet would freeze solid, become brittle, break off. But the tracks were clear, pressed into the snow. Walking tracks. Not stumbling, not running. Just walking calmly, deliberately, south. We followed them, we had to. Maybe they'd taken shelter somewhere. Maybe they'd survived somehow. The tracks led south, towards the drill site. We followed for over a kilometer, and then they just stopped. Not like they got covered by drifting snow. The snow conditions weren't right for that, they just ended. Like the people making them had walked until they'd literally frozen to the ground, then sublimated directly into the air. Or like they'd been taken, lifted up. We searched the area extensively. We used thermal imaging, ground-penetrating radar, metal detectors in case they were buried. Nothing. 12 people walked out into the storm and vanished. We didn't find any bodies, not one. 12 people walked out into conditions that should have killed them in minutes. And there's no trace, no remains, nothing. It's impossible. They should have died just outside the station. We should have found them collapsed near the door. But there was nothing, just footprints that led nowhere. The investigation that followed was unprecedented. Teams from 6 nations converged on Station Polaris. The site was treated as both a missing persons case and a potential scientific phenomenon. Every piece of equipment was tested, every surface was analysed, every recording was examined. The drill site received particular attention. Multiple teams used ice-penetrating radar to scan to depths of 5 kilometers. Seismic sensors listened for any anomaly in the ice structure. Thermal imaging looked for heat signatures that might indicate caverns or voids. Ground teams drilled new exploratory holes, avoiding the original shaft but attempting to access the same depth. They found nothing, solid ice, all the way down. No cavern, no tunnels, no void. According to all geological surveys, there had never been a cavity at that depth. The ice core drilling records existed, the radio transmissions existed, the journal entries existed, but when investigators attempted to correlate the data with physical reality, nothing matched. It was as if the drill had been recording data from a different location entirely, or from a different time, or from a different dimension. The lead investigator, Dr. Michael Torres, a geologist from the United States Antarctic program, and the same man who had worked with Hendricks on previous expeditions, spent 3 months at Station Polaris analysing every scrap of data. His final report is a masterpiece of scientific frustration. "We have contradictory evidence," he says in an interview, his frustration evident in every word. "We have radio recordings of the team describing a cavern, multiple recordings, different people, consistent descriptions. We have Dr. Hendricks' journal describing structures and carvings. We have video footage from the remote camera showing a large cavity with carved walls. We have instrument readings showing temperature anomalies and empty space. We have audio recordings of people discussing what they saw. But when we scan the same location now, there's nothing, just solid ice. The cores we've extracted show no discontinuities, no voids, no variation in density. The ice is pristine, uninterrupted, compressed exactly as it should be at that depth. Either every instrument they had malfunctioned in exactly the same way, at exactly the same time, giving completely false but internally consistent readings, or..." He trails off, unwilling to finish the thought. "Or," the interviewer prompts. Torres sighs. The sound of a man who has spent months wrestling with impossible questions and found no answers. Or something was there, and now it's not. Something that could exist in the ice, could create spaces and structures, could interact with the research team, could affect their minds and perceptions, and then could erase all physical evidence of its existence. Something that could seal itself away again, hide itself so completely that our best instruments can't find any trace. Something that could reshape reality, at least locally, at least temporarily. Are you suggesting something alive, something conscious? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm a scientist. I deal in evidence and falsifiable hypotheses, and the evidence doesn't make sense. 12 people vanished in impossible conditions. 2 more were lost in the initial incident. We have recordings, journals, testimony from multiple witnesses. Something happened at Station Polaris. Something that defies conventional explanation, but I can't tell you what it was because it's not there anymore. If it ever was. Could they have hallucinated the entire cavern? Mass psychosis. Mass psychosis doesn't create consistent instrument readings, doesn't produce identical video footage seen by multiple people, doesn't leave physical evidence like Hendricks' return from the cavern or the rearranged food storage. Psychosis is internal. This had external measurable effects. Then what's your conclusion? Torres is silent for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is careful, each word chosen with precision. My official conclusion is that the cause of the incident remains undetermined pending further investigation. Unofficially, I think they found something down there. Something that has been in the Antarctic ice for a very, very long time. Something that should not exist according to our current understanding of biology, geology, physics. Something that perceived them and reached out, communicated, called to them. And they answered. Where are they now? I don't know, dead most likely, frozen in the ice somewhere beyond our ability to detect. Or he stops, shaking his head. Or what? Or exactly where Dr. Hendricks wrote in his journal. Home. They went home, just not the home we understand. But not all evidence vanished. Dr. Hendricks' journal was recovered from his quarters, found placed carefully on his desk, open to the last entry. The final entry, dated November 17th at 11:50 p.m, was written in handwriting that devolved from his usual neat script into something barely legible, the letters growing larger and more erratic as the entry progressed, as if his hand could barely keep up with his thoughts. It wasn't a discovery. It was an invitation. We were never supposed to drill that deep. Some things are buried for a reason. But we found it. Or it found us. I can't tell anymore. The singing has been in my head for days now. Getting louder, getting clearer. And I understand now what it's saying. What it's been saying since we broke through the ice and woke it up. It's not threatening us. It's not attacking us. It's calling us home. Back to where we came from. Back to where everything came from. Life on Earth didn't begin in tidal pools or volcanic vents. It began in Antarctica, millions of years ago, when the continent was warm and green. They were here. They built things, created things, made life. And then the world changed. The ice came, and they went down into the deep ice. And they've been there ever since, sleeping, waiting, remembering. Lisa and Thomas understood first. They went to it willingly. They weren't taken. They chose to go. They saw what it was showing us, and they understood. They're not dead. They're preserved, sleeping in the ice, dreaming with it, waiting with it. And they're so happy. I can hear them in the singing. They want us to join them. All of us. The others are starting to hear it too. Fletcher, Walsh, Park. Soon everyone will hear, everyone will understand. This is what we were always meant to do. This is why humanity was drawn to Antarctica. Why we couldn't leave it alone. Why we had to drill deeper and deeper. It was calling us. It's been calling us for millions of years. Calling its children home. We're going home tonight. All of us. The storm will cover our departure, and we'll join them in the ice. We'll sleep and dream and wait with them, forever. Part of the song, part of the memory, part of the ice. I'm not afraid anymore. I should be. But I'm not. I'm excited, like a child coming home after a long day away. Jennifer will understand eventually. Emma and Sophie will understand. Everyone will understand when their time comes. Because it's calling all of us, slowly, patiently, but inevitably. The ice remembers everything, every life, every moment, every thought, and we'll be part of that memory. We'll be remembered, forever, preserved in crystal, sleeping in the deep ice, dreaming with our ancestors, waiting for the world to change again, waiting for the ice to melt, waiting to wake up. We're going home, just not the home we left. The journal entry ends there, but written in the margin in even more erratic handwriting, as if added in haste, are 3 final words. They're here now. Dr. Patricia Vance, who has studied Antarctic research and climate science for 20 years, offers her perspective on the incident. She speaks slowly, choosing her words with the careful precision of someone who understands how easily one can sound unscientific when discussing the inexplicable. Antarctica is the largest desert on Earth, she says, looking out her office window at the rainy British landscape, perhaps wishing for clearer, colder horizons. 14 million square kilometers, 98% of it covered in ice that averages over a mile thick, reaching depths of nearly 3 miles in places. We've explored maybe 1% of what's beneath that ice, maybe less. We've drilled a few cores, scanned some areas with radar, sent a few submarines beneath the ice shelves, but mostly it's unknown, completely unknown. There could be anything down there. Ancient lakes isolated for millions of years, with ecosystems that evolved independently of the surface world. Geological formations we've never encountered. Mineral deposits that defy our understanding of chemistry. Chemical processes that don't occur anywhere else on Earth. She turns back to the camera, her expression serious. Or other things. Things we don't have names for. Things we don't have frameworks to understand. Antarctica is old. The ice sheets began forming 34 million years ago, but the continent itself is much older. It was part of Gondwana, the supercontinent. It was warm once, covered in forests, teeming with life, and then it moved south, and the ice came, and everything that lived there either migrated, or adapted, or died. Or went down into the deep ice, down where it was warmer, down where liquid water could still exist under the pressure, down where life could continue in isolation from the surface world. What could survive down there? What could adapt to those conditions? What could live for millions of years, in the dark, under the ice, waiting? She pauses, her expression troubled. We assume we understand our planet. We've mapped the surface, charted the oceans, drilled into the crust. We think we know what's possible and what's not, what can exist and what can't. But Antarctica reminds us how little we actually know, how much is still hidden beneath the ice, how many assumptions we've made that might be wrong. And maybe, just maybe, some things are hidden for a reason. Maybe some secrets should stay buried. Maybe we're not ready to know everything that's down there. Maybe we'll never be ready. Dr. Owen Fletcher survived the incident. He was the only one. When the rescue team found him 3 days after the storm, he was in one of the station's storage buildings, the one furthest from the main facility. He'd locked himself in, barricaded the door with equipment crates, wrapped himself in every piece of insulation and cold weather gear he could find. He was hypothermic, barely conscious, suffering from severe dehydration and the beginning stages of frostbite. But he was alive. His testimony helped investigators piece together the timeline. But Fletcher himself remembers nothing after the lights went out on November 17th. He has no memory of how he got to the storage building, no memory of barricading himself in, no memory of the 3 days he spent there while the storm raged outside. His last clear memory is standing in the common area, hearing the singing, feeling the overwhelming compulsion to go outside. Then nothing. A gap of 3 days that he cannot account for. But he remembers the dreams. And the dreams haven't stopped. In an interview conducted 6 months after his rescue, Fletcher sits in a sunny office in London, thousands of miles from Antarctica, surrounded by books and plants and all the comfortable trappings of civilization. But his eyes carry the Antarctic with him, a haunted quality that never quite fades. I still have them every night, he admits, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup, seeking warmth even in the heated office. The same dream over and over. I'm back in those tunnels, walking deeper, always deeper into the ice, and I can hear them, all of them, calling my name, David, Lisa, Thomas, the others, telling me to come home, telling me I'm late, telling me they're waiting. Sometimes it's just voices, but sometimes I can see them. They're in the ice, but they're not dead. They're preserved, like insects in amber, but conscious, aware, alive in some way I don't have words for, and they're singing, all of them together. This complex, beautiful harmony that I can never quite remember when I wake up, but I know it's beautiful. I know it's calling me. He looks up and there's something in his expression that suggests he's not entirely sorry he survived. Or perhaps sorry in a complicated way, grieving not just for his lost colleagues but for an opportunity missed. The worst part is I know they're still there. I can't explain how I know. I have no evidence, no proof, but I know deep in my bones, in some part of me that existed before rational thought, that they're still there. Somewhere in the ice, not dead, just elsewhere, in a state we don't have words for, sleeping, dreaming, waiting, and they're not alone anymore. They're with whatever was down there, whatever called them, and they're happy. Are they dead or alive? The interviewer asks. Fletcher considers the question for a long moment. I don't think those categories apply. We think of life and death as binary. You're one or the other. But what if there are other states? What if you can be preserved in a way that's neither? What if you can exist outside of time, outside of normal biological processes, but still be conscious, still be aware, still be in some meaningful sense, you? That sounds like wishful thinking, like not wanting to accept that your colleagues are dead. Maybe, Fletcher admits, but I don't think so. Sometimes in the dreams, they talk to me, they tell me things, and when I wake up and check, those things are true, things I couldn't have known, haven't known. Small details about their lives, about their research, about places they'd been. How do I know those things if I'm just dreaming? How can a dream tell me true things I had no way of knowing? You think they're communicating with you? I think something is communicating with me, using their voices, their faces, their memories, reaching out from the ice. And I think it wants me to come back, to finish what I started, to join them. And the terrifying part is, he trails off, looking out the window at the London skyline, so far from the frozen wastes of Antarctica. The terrifying part is what? The interviewer prompts. The terrifying part is, I want to. Part of me wants to go back, wants to return to Antarctica, wants to find the drill site and go down into the ice and join them. And that desire gets stronger every day. Every dream makes it a little bit stronger. One day, maybe soon, it might be strong enough that I can't resist anymore. One day I might book a flight south and not come back. You've been banned from Antarctica. Psychological unfitness. Bans can be circumvented, Fletcher says softly. Money can buy passage on private expeditions. False names can be used. And Antarctica is huge. There are places you can go where no one will find you, where no one will stop you. And the ice is patient. It's been there for millions of years. It'll be there for millions more. And I think it's still calling, not just to me, to others, to anyone who gets close enough to hear, to anyone who drills deep enough, to anyone who's ready to go home. Station Polaris was officially decommissioned in March 2024, 4 months after the incident. The International Oversight Committee determined that the site was unsafe for human habitation due to unresolved psychological hazards. The buildings were sealed, the equipment was left in place, and the entire facility was marked as off-limits. The drill site received special attention. The original shaft was filled with concrete to a depth of 500 meters. The remaining cavity was sealed with steel caps rated to withstand the pressure of the overlying ice. Warning beacons were placed in a perimeter around the site, broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Danger, prohibited area, do not drill, do not excavate, extreme hazard. International Sunstral Agreement prohibits any drilling operations within 100 kilometers of the former Station Polaris site. No exceptions, no appeals. The area has been designated a permanent exclusion zone. Current satellite imagery shows the station as a small dark cluster against the endless white, gradually being buried by drifting snow. In a few years, it will be completely covered. The buildings will disappear beneath the ice. In a few decades, they'll be crushed by the weight of accumulated snow compression. In a century, Station Polaris will be just a layer of compressed metal and plastic in an ice core, a thin band of industrial contamination, marking the brief moment when humans tried to understand the frozen continent. All that will remain is the story, the mystery, the unanswered questions. But there's one final detail, one piece of evidence that keeps the case technically open. that prevents investigators from closing the file and moving on. In April 2024, 5 months after the incident, seismologists monitoring tectonic activity across Antarctica detected unusual vibrations, deep vibrations, coming from far beneath the ice sheet. The source location was approximately 2 kilometers south of Station Polaris, directly along the path the footprints had followed before they vanished into nothing. Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the seismologists who detected the anomaly, explains the finding with visible discomfort. We have seismometers distributed across Antarctica in a grid pattern monitoring for earthquakes, volcanic activity, ice sheet movement, any significant seismic events. It's part of the International Antarctic Seismic Network. In April, multiple stations picked up these vibrations. Low frequency, very deep source. We triangulated the origin to at least 2 kilometers beneath the surface, possibly deeper. She pulls up the seismograph data on her computer, the waves creating regular patterns across the screen. Look at this perfect rhythm, 3.7 seconds between each pulse. That's not geological activity. Earthquakes don't pulse with regular intervals. Volcanic activity doesn't maintain rhythm. Ice movement doesn't pulse. These vibrations were regular, consistent, for 3 weeks straight. Then they stopped. What could cause that? The interviewer asks. Kim shakes her head, clearly uncomfortable with the question. I don't know. Officially, we've classified it as an unknown geophysical phenomenon. Pending further investigation, we've proposed several hypotheses. Subglacial lake oscillation, resonance in ice fractures, pressure release from trapped gases, but none of them really fit the data. None of them explain the perfect regularity or the sudden cessation. What's your unofficial opinion? She hesitates, glancing around as if checking that no colleagues are listening. Unofficially? Some of us have noticed that 3.7 seconds is approximately 16 beats per minute. Very slow, but the same rate as a human heartbeat in deep hibernation, or in cryogenic suspension, or in some state between life and death where metabolic processes are slowed to near zero. The implications hang in the air. 16 beats per minute times 12 people would give you, the interviewer begins. Don't, Kim interrupts. Don't finish that thought. We're scientists. We deal in evidence and falsifiable hypotheses. What you're suggesting is not falsifiable. It's not scientific. It's what you're thinking. Kim is silent for a long moment. It's what all of us are thinking. But we can't say it. We can't put it in official reports. Because if we're right, if those vibrations are what we think they are, then we have to accept something that shouldn't be possible. That 12 people walked into an Antarctic storm and somehow survived. That they're down there beneath the ice, in some state we don't understand. That they're alive, or something like alive. And if that's true, then everything we understand about human biology, about survival, about death itself, is wrong. The seismologists reported their findings to the international research community. Multiple stations confirmed the readings. The vibrations were real, not instrument error. They continued for exactly 3 weeks, from April 3rd to April 24th, 2024. Then they stopped abruptly at 3:17 AM Coordinated Universal Time on April 24th. No natural phenomenon explained them. No equipment failure could account for the precision of the rhythm or the synchronized cessation across all monitoring stations. No official explanation was ever released to the public. But the seismologists who detected them have a theory. They won't state it publicly, won't risk their professional reputations, or invite ridicule from their peers. But in private conversations, in late-night discussions at conferences, after enough drinks to loosen tongues and lower inhibitions, they'll admit what they think. Something is down there, something large, or perhaps many somethings. Something that was sleeping, but woke up when the drill broke through. Something that called 12 researchers into the ice and took them down. Something that, for 3 weeks, had a heartbeat, a collective heartbeat, 12 hearts beating as one, slow and steady, in the deep ice. Then it went back to sleep, back to waiting, back to dreaming beneath miles of ice, taking the 12 with it, preserving them, keeping them, making them part of itself. Station Polaris remains closed. The ice keeps its secrets, the drill site stays sealed, the exclusion zone is enforced. But sometimes, late at night, research stations across Antarctica pick up strange interference on their radio systems. Static mostly, white noise, background radiation from space and atmospheric interference, they tell themselves. Nothing unusual, nothing to worry about, but occasionally, if you listen very carefully, if you filter out the obvious noise and amplify the underlying signal, if you're willing to actually pay attention instead of dismissing it as equipment error, there's something underneath, something rhythmic, something that might be voices, something that might be singing. Not random noise, not atmospheric interference, something with structure, with melody, with meaning. 12 voices, perhaps, 12 researchers who walked into the storm and never came back. Still there, still singing, still calling, still waiting for others to join them in the deep ice. Dr. Fletcher has listened to some of these recordings. Investigators brought them to him during the investigation, played them over headphones, watched his face for recognition. They asked if he recognized any of the voices, if he could identify his colleagues, if he heard what they thought they heard. Fletcher listened for hours to the recordings, his expression growing more and more distant, more and more haunted. Finally, he removed the headphones and spoke. "It sounds like the singing from my dreams. The harmony is the same, the rhythm is the same, and I think I can hear David, and Lisa, and Thomas, and the others. They're all there, all singing together, and they sound..." He paused, struggling with the word. "They sound happy, content, at peace. Whatever happened to them, wherever they are, they sound like they've finally found what they were looking for. Like they've come home after a long journey. And that's somehow more terrifying than if they sounded afraid or in pain. Because it means they went willingly. It means they chose this. It means they understood something we don't. And it means they want others to understand too. They want others to join them. They're still calling, still inviting, still singing. The families of the missing researchers have never received closure. There were no bodies to bury, no graves to visit, no physical evidence that their loved ones are truly gone. Officially, they died in a research accident, cause unknown, remains unrecovered. Memorials were held, benefits were paid. Life insurance companies argued about whether to pay out on policies when no bodies were found. The investigation was eventually closed with no definitive conclusions. But Jennifer Hendricks, David's widow, has never accepted it. She sits in her Colorado home, her daughters now 9 and 12, growing up without their father, and she refuses to believe he's dead. "They didn't die," she says firmly, her jaw set with determination. Emma and Sophie sit beside their mother, listening to her say these words they've heard many times before. Everyone thinks I'm in denial. The therapist thinks I need to accept reality and move on. The insurance company thinks I'm making claims in bad faith, but I know my husband. I knew his mind. He wasn't impulsive. He wasn't suicidal. He wouldn't have walked out into a storm without a reason. She pulls out David's journal, the copy investigators return to her, and opens it to the last entry. "Read this. Read what he wrote. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused. He understood something. Something down there spoke to him, showed him something, and he understood it. And he went willingly. He chose to go. And I think he's still there, not dead, just somewhere else, somewhere we can't follow. Yet." "Yet?" the interviewer asks gently. Jennifer looks at her daughters, then back at the camera, and her expression is haunted by grief and hope in equal measure. Antarctica is calling more people every year. More researchers report strange dreams, unusual compulsions, hearing things they can't explain. More stations report equipment malfunctions and unexplained phenomena. Dr. Fletcher still has the dreams. The seismologist detected the heartbeat. The radio operators hear the singing. It's like whatever is down there is waking up, getting stronger, reaching further, growing more active. And I think eventually it won't just call researchers who drill too deep. It'll call more people. People who've never been to Antarctica. People who live normal lives far from the ice. The call will get stronger, louder, more insistent. And people will answer. They'll go south. They'll find their way to the ice. And they'll go down. They'll join David and the others in whatever that place is beneath the ice. That sounds like... I know how it sounds, Jennifer interrupts. I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist or a grieving widow who can't let go. But ask Dr. Fletcher about his dreams. Ask the seismologists about the heartbeat. Ask the radio operators about the singing. Ask the meteorologists why more and more researchers are requesting reassignment away from Antarctica, why people are refusing winter duty, why experienced polar scientists are retiring early and refusing to talk about their reasons. Something is happening down there. Something is growing, and it's waiting. Waiting for the ice to melt. Waiting for more people to come. Waiting to bring us all home. The recording from that final distress call still exists, archived in multiple government databases, available to investigators with proper security clearance. It has been analysed by audio specialists, filtered through noise reduction software, examined for hidden messages or subliminal content. If you listen to it, you can hear Dr. David Hendricks' voice, desperate and afraid, warning anyone who will listen. Something's wrong. The ice. We shouldn't have gone down there. His voice breaks on the last word. The transmission dissolves into static, but if you listen very, very carefully, if you isolate the background noise and amplify it, if you use the right filters and the right equipment, you can hear something else. Something that wasn't noticed in the initial investigation, but that enhanced audio analysis revealed months later. Just before the transmission ends, underneath Hendricks' voice, barely audible beneath the static, there's another sound. Multiple sounds, overlapping, harmonizing. The sound of people singing, not in panic, not in fear, not in desperation or pain, in harmony, in joy, in welcome, in something that sounds like a family reuniting after a long separation, in something that sounds like coming home. 12 voices singing together, creating a harmony that no human composer ever wrote, that no human choir ever performed. A melody that existed before humanity, that will exist after humanity, that calls to something deep in our genetic memory. And if you listen to the very end of the recording, in the last second before the transmission cuts out completely, you can hear one voice rise above the others, clearly, unmistakably. Dr. David Hendricks, no longer afraid, no longer warning, no longer human in the way we understand humanity, just singing, joyfully, peacefully, eternally, his voice blending with the others, becoming part of the harmony, part of the song that echoes through the ice, still singing, always singing, forever singing, waiting for others to hear, waiting for others to understand, waiting for others to join the song, waiting in the ice, waiting to bring us home. The investigation officially closed in September 2024. Final determination. Incident at Station Polaris resulted in the deaths of 12 researchers due to unknown circumstances, possibly related to psychological breakdown induced by extreme environmental stress. Remains unrecovered due to harsh conditions. Site decommissioned and sealed. Case closed. But the case isn't really closed. Every research station in Antarctica has been briefed officially and unofficially. Every drilling operation has been warned. Every scientist who works on the ice has been told the story, whether through official channels or whispered conversations in mess halls and laboratories. Don't drill too deep. Don't listen if you hear singing. Don't trust your dreams, especially if others are having the same ones. And if the ice starts calling you home, if you feel the compulsion to go outside, to walk south, to find the source of the melody in your head, run. Leave Antarctica. Get as far away as you can. Because if you answer the call, you won't come back. Or you'll come back changed. Or you won't come back in a way that makes sense anymore. Because the ice remembers everything. Every moment, every life, every thought that ever existed. The ice preserves. The ice waits. And the ice is always, always calling. Some things were never meant to be discovered. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Some places should remain untouched, unexplored, unknown. Station Polaris stands empty now, slowly disappearing under the drifting snow. The buildings are sealed. The equipment is abandoned. The drill site is closed. The investigation is over. But every year, a few more researchers report strange dreams. A few more radio operators hear singing in the static. A few more seismologists detect rhythmic vibrations from deep beneath the ice. A few more people feel the call. And sometimes on the clearest Antarctic nights, when the aurora dances and the stars shine cold and bright over the frozen wasteland, people stationed at remote research outposts look south, toward where Station Polaris used to be, and they swear they can see lights in the darkness. Blue-white lights, like ice-catching starlight, like frozen fire, like something alive in the dead landscape, moving with purpose, dancing between the pressure ridges, coming closer, always closer, year by year, season by season, dream by dream. The ice is patient, the ice is vast, the ice is eternal, and the ice is calling us home, all of us. Eventually, one by one or all at once, when we're ready, when we're willing to hear, when we're ready to remember what we've forgotten, when we're ready to return to where we came from, when we're ready to join the song that has been singing since before time began. The ice will wait. The ice always waits. And one day when the world has changed again, when the ice begins to melt, when the ancient secrets beneath Antarctica are finally revealed, we'll understand. We'll understand what David Hendricks understood. We'll understand what the 12 understood. We'll understand what's been waiting in the deep ice for millions of years. We'll understand why they went willingly, and we'll understand why they're still singing, still calling, still waiting to bring us home.